Well, we're calling this series Everything About Serial Killers You Need to Know, and Some Things That You Wish You Did Not Know. This and a whole lot more right here on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. This is part 2 of Serial Killers Among Us, what some people are calling this podcast the fastest minutes in podcasting. Well, hello and welcome to today's episode. This is part 2 of Serial Killers Among Us. As a reminder, there's anywhere between 25 and 50 active serial killers among us on any given day. That's according to experts. And again today, we're going to tell you everything you need to know about them and some things you wish you did not know. But first, let me take time to welcome any and all new listeners to this week's podcast. If you are new and want to hear more of our episodes, or if you just need to get caught up, just go to charliecrimebuster.com. That's charliecrimebuster.com. Get caught up on our episodes. They're listed right there on our website. Hey, by the way, if you are a first-time listener and you've never contacted us personally, hey, give me a shout-out. You can reach me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you, and we do have a special gift for all of those who contact us for the first time. Again, reach me, go to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Also, please take time to like our page at Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. We would be most appreciative. It helps us attract other listeners. Now, we're getting several contacts now about our new project that's scheduled to be released on Police Week coming up next month. Please take the time to check it out by going to peacemakernetwork.com. That's peacemakernetwork.com. We find that many of the people who are our fans here at Charlie Crimebuster, well, you're also big supporters of our heroes, and you can play a major role in helping us help our cops, our first responders, and our military by going, again, to peacemakernetwork.com. And if you are one of those heroes, past or present, by all means, go there today. Check into our Hero Portal. It's called Hero Portal. Just click on that, and you're going to see some real benefits that are there for you, again, at no cost. peacemakernetwork.com. Now, our focus today, well, it is serial killers among us. Now, I left off last week telling you about the Long Island serial killer that has never yet been caught. I also briefly mentioned another serial killer, this one from South Carolina. That was called the Jeff Davis, and the Jeff Davis 8 Killers. You see, between 2005 and 2009, well, the bodies of 8 women. Those women were between the ages of 17 and 30. They were found dumped in the swamps of Jefferson Davis Parish near Jennings, Louisiana. Now, interestingly, the victims had several things in common. In fact, several of them knew each other. One pair of the victims, well, they were even cousins. And perhaps even more weird was that all of the victims, well, they had acted as police informants. Several of whom actually reported on other of the victims. That was before their own murders. Now, the investigation into murders of the Jefferson Davis 8, well, they never really identified a legitimate suspect. But it did lead to some very wild allegations of misconduct, of course, among Louisiana police. There was an investigative reporter. He later stated that the person or people responsible for these killings were most likely of law enforcement. And given the victim's history, it's really not too implausible. The fact that the perpetrator or perpetrators could be investigating their own crimes, well, that makes the Jeff Davis 8, well, it makes it a particularly disturbing case. And today, that case is known as a possible example of police corruption. In October 2019, well, there was great interest in the case, and that interest was renewed as a result of Showtime's new documentary on the case. If you'd like more information on this particular serial killer's activity, you can check out the Showtime documentary. It is sure worth watching for sure. Well, now, in order to catch serial killers, it is necessary to first understand about serial killers. You know, it just might interest you to know that many experts do suggest that there have been several serial killers throughout history. In fact, some say that the legends such as werewolves and vampires, that they were actually inspired by actual medieval serial killers. Now, we shared some things that are true about serial killers in last week's episode. Well, to start out this week's episode, I want to share with you a few things that are simply not true about serial killers. Last week, we shared with you that serial killer motives are somewhat different than other murders. It is a fact that most of them have a psychological gratification motive, and that gratification may include sexual contact with the victim. We also did mention that additional motives may be anger. Remember the example of the serial killer last week that said he hated everybody? And other motives would include thrill-seeking, financial gain, and even attention-getting. You see, I remember just this past month of listening to an interview of another kind of murder. This was a hitman who was saying that he did his murders because somebody broke the rules of the mafia, and that he was just being a good soldier. This was his way of justifying his murders as a hitman for the mob. However, let me be perfectly clear with you about serial killers and most murders. Even though motives can sometimes be difficult to define, and may even involve multiple motives, and those motives may evolve from one motive to another, just rest assured, my friend, that serial killers kill because they want to. In other words, they make a choice to do so. You see, there's another myth that goes along with that, and that is that some people are just wired that way, that they cannot stop themselves or help themselves. There was actual study that found that one serial killer had an extra Y chromosome. Then another had another chromosome variance. However, that one was later proven false. My friend, it is not a chromosome makeup that causes one to kill. Again, let me say, they wanted to kill. They chose to kill. Now, last week I told you about the McDonald triad. That has been studied and used by those who study criminal conduct. You remember the three, don't you? Number 1, cruelty to animals. Number 2, fascination or setting of fires. And 3, bedwetting past a certain age. Now, while it was true that in a number of serial killers that those three things were present, it has also been true in many people that did not turn out to be serial killers. Again, while it might put them into a disposition to turn to crime, it is not the reason they did so. They did so because they chose to do so. They wanted to, and they followed their desires rather than control their desires. The fact that they could and can control their desires, well, that's been brought out time and time again in instances where we have found serial killers who have simply stopped their killing. In fact, the recent prosecution of the Golden State Killer, you see, he was caught when he was in his late 70s. Well, that's an example, an excellent example, actually. You see, even though he stopped killing for decades, that's right, he had stopped killing for decades before he was caught. He chose to stop, and he did. Now, if you want to know more information about that, well, check out our past podcasts. Boy, that was a really interesting one. It's simply called The Golden State Killer. Now, again, I think it's important to realize that it is not true that serial killers have no choice but to kill. They choose to kill because they want to kill. And, of course, if you know me, you know that I believe they should pay for their crime. No, my friend, we simply cannot excuse this behavior, no matter how dramatic it is. Now, in a moment, I want to discuss with you a little more about this type of behavior. And get this, I'm going to share with you how there is a possibility that we may even see more of these serial killers in the future. That's right, I said we may see more serial killers in the future. And I'm going to tell you why I believe that in just a moment. But right now, it is time for our Courageous Citizen of the Week story. We share each week a courageous citizen that we want to recognize here on Charlie Crime Buster. Our Courageous Citizen of the Week story today is a lady by the name of Ashley Marie Aldridge. She was just a 19-year-old homemaker, mother of two, looking out of her window when she witnessed a man getting stuck while trying to cross railroad tracks in his motorized wheelchair. In desperation, the man called out for help. This was as a train was approaching at nearly 80 miles an hour. It had already activated the crossing gates and the warning lights. Now, although Ashley was barefoot, she ran to help the 75-year-old man, disregarding the dangers with that train bearing down on them. Aldridge, she pulled on the man. It took 2 attempts for the young mother to pull Earl Mormon out of the wheelchair, and with only seconds to spare, in a flash, that train struck and destroyed the wheelchair. But Earl Mormon, he was safely on the ground, on the side of the tracks, out of harm's way, all thanks to the inspired bravery of Ashley Marie Aldridge. Hey, let's all learn a lesson from Ashley, and let's look out for our disabled Americans. Be alert to the dangers that others face. And let's give a real Charlie salute to Ashley Aldridge, who is our Charlie Courageous Citizen of the Week. Now back to our focus. Serial Killers Among Us, Part 2. Last week we shared with you that the golden era of serial killers, it was from the 1970s to the 1990s, and how that number began to decrease in about 1998. And if you recall, I did mention to you the reason why that is going downward. You see, today we're better equipped to catch them. Forensic investigations, like those you see on CSI. DNA that can even be used as it was in catching the Golden State Killer that I mentioned earlier, and is used in cold cases even this very moment, but not only using DNA, but using ancestry DNA. And of course, there's more media attention, including social media, and the mass amount of cameras recording the coming and going of people. Plus today, remember, law enforcement is more linked together with things like CODIS and APHIS, whereby law enforcement can now share information nationally and even internationally today. All of this, it's probably stopped untold how many people from killing. However, there is something that might and should cause us alarm. You see, while the number of serial killers have decreased from its golden era, there's a criminologist by the name of Jose Snackley. He says, quote, "The young criminal you see today is more detached from his victim, more ready to hurt or to kill. The lack of empathy for their victims among young criminals, my friend, it's just one symptom of a problem that affects the whole society." You see, you and I do not have to look far to see this happening, do we? Not just in young people either. People today, they've actually shot one another because of their French fries that they received in the drive-thru. They were not hot enough, or they were not served fast enough. People are committing crime because they have to wait too long in line, and it goes on, doesn't it? You see, my friend, it gets down to behavior, or the lack of behaving in a mutual, respectful way. I remember when I first moved to Florida several years ago, I had the opportunity to travel around to the various sheriff's departments across the state. I got to address officers during their roll calls. One of those such departments had a boot camp for juvenile offenders. There, they showed me and told me how they would begin to teach the young offenders a very simple lesson. You see, in the middle of the floor was a painting of the sheriff's shield that often bears the logo of the county. And the first lesson that these young offenders were taught is to never walk on that shield, never touch that shield, never disrespect that shield. I was then told that most of the young offenders they deal with, well, they've never learned the term respect. And the first lesson they learn while there is that we all need to respect something. Hey, that is the key, isn't it? Now, if you are one of those liberal-bent people who say, whoa there now, we should not be saying respect the police, we should say defund the police. We should not teach that kind of respect. I would just say to you, think before you speak for a change. You see, we drive on our side of the road because we respect the rights of others to drive on their side of the road. We stand in line, again, because it's fair to wait our turn. This mutual respect is what really keeps us from becoming a jungle out there in society. And my friend, we are vastly losing it when it comes to the respect that we need to show one another. And behind that, well, it becomes a lack of empathy. That which I was just talking about. The same type of lack of empathy that serial killers carry with them in their killing. You see, the Constitution, well, it's an agreement that we here in America have agreed to live by. And that agreement guarantees the right of others to live and to pursue life. And we can only live that and do that by respecting the rights of others. The rights of others regardless of race, gender, and regardless if we are different from another in our customs. You see, my friend, if we lose the ability to respect others, we will lose it all. Well, enough of my lecturing in this podcast for now. And back to our focus on serial killers among us. But now, before we get back to that, it is now time for us to mention our crazy crook of the week. Now, our crazy crook story today comes from abroad. It is really good to know that the United States, well, it isn't the only nation that has crazy crooks. You see, we have a good number of tourists here in Florida who come from all over the world. Well, I would only ask of those, well, that they leave their crazy crooks over there. You see, my friend, we have enough of them here. So here is a story from the UK. It seems that a UK driver, now get this, who was arrested for reckless driving had officers in stitches. Get this, after producing a license from Logoland. Yeah, the driver, well, he was pursued from a place called Bexley to Isle of Shepley, and he was arrested on a multitude of offenses last week. That was according to a tweet by the Kent police. They apprehended this 21-year-old motorist in February, following a real police chase. And the chase began after officers attempted to pull over an Audi A7 that they had observed maneuvering recklessly all over the road near Bexley. However, the driver, he refused. That resulted in a 35-mile chase that took them from southeast London to Kent. They were even forced to call out a police helicopter to aid with the pursuit. Well, eventually, the pursuing officers, well, they caught up with the knucklehead. They caught him in Minster, Kent, after, get this, after he ran out of gas. Another dumb move. And then next, whereupon they found, oh my, a large stash of marijuana in his car. Well, the pursuing officers, they caught up with this idiot in Minster, Kent, again, after he ran out of gas. There, the officers asked a Sheerness native for his documentation. Well, he brandished a fake license. A fake license he received from Logoland there in Windsor as a kid way back in 2003. You see, that fake license, that award, is gifted to children who pass the theme park's driving tests, which entails using a brick-built electric car to navigate traffic lights, roundabouts, logo policemen, and even a speed camera Well, the man had received his fake license at Logoland when he was a toddler back in 2003. And as I said earlier, he also picked up not only logos, but a large stash of pot in the car. Now, the cops, they joked in their tweet that the Logoland license was not the reason the driver's dangerous driving was the reason he was caught, along with a large amount of pot, and along with not having a bona fide driver's license. This crazy crook was arrested at the scene on suspicion of dangerous driving, failing to stop, possession of a Class B drug, driving with no insurance, and driving with no license, of course, other than his logo license. And he has reportedly been released on bail until his court date. And that, my friend, is our crazy crook story of the week. Now back to our focus. You may be wondering, since I said that regardless of motive or the way someone was raised, well, that serial killers, they kill because they want to and choose to. You might then ask, well, why take the time to study them? And why have I mentioned so many things about them in these two podcasts? Well, it's simple. The more we know about them, the more we understand such things, and the better we will be at catching them before they kill, or they kill again. You see, you look for such patterns of behavior. That's why it is important to know about the McDonald triad, because these traits are common in some serial killers. There's another example of this. It was in the case of Natalie Ann Holloway. Remember her? She was the 18-year-old American young lady whose mysterious disappearance, well, it made international news. That was after she vanished on May the 30th, 2005, near the end of our high school graduation trip in Aruba. That's there in the Caribbean. You see, her suspected killer, who no doubt in my mind did the deed, his name was Joram Vandersloot. Information gathered about his childhood, now get this, was that he actually set a cat on fire by putting the cat in the microwave. Again, there is that connection to animal cruelty. Now, if I was an investigator of that case, well, that fact alone would not lead me to know that he was guilty of killing Natalie. But it would certainly cause me to dig deeper into investigating him. And by the way, Joram, who I know did that killing, well, he's now in custody of the Dutch officials, because he's now been convicted, you got it, of killing another young lady in Peru back in 2010. Again, we look for patterns. We study their behavior. And you do not have to look long before you find out something else among the serial killers among us. That is the fact that they actually can be placed into 3 different categories. And according to the FBI, those categories are, number 1, organized, number 2, disorganized, and number 3, mixed between the two. I think there's a great example of this in one of our most notorious serial killers, Ted Bundy. You see, Ted was one of those who, well, they fit a time when we mentioned last week, which is called the mask of normality. This is a term that is used. You see, he was actually quite charming, according to many. He even worked on a hotline of helping others. He successfully fit into a campus culture. He was liked by many that he associated with at that time. Some had said he was, quote, full of great potential. Yet he was the one who confessed to 30 murders that he committed in 7 different states between 1974 and 1978. And yet some have actually estimated that he killed hundreds. Well, for sure, he killed more than the 30 he confessed to. But, my friend, I want you to know he picked the wrong state in one of those 7 by killing right here in Florida. Here in Florida, where we nabbed him, put him away, and executed him on January the 24th, 1989. But he was a real example of those 3 categories. You see, at first, he was extremely organized. He actually killed from a Volkswagen, where he had even moved out one of the seats to prepare to transport his victim. He even had his own murder kit in it. He was extremely organized, had even pre-planned his burial ground, which was away from the abduction. all the way into other jurisdictions. You see, this is why he remained at large so long. He knew how to spread his crime across jurisdictions to do his killing. You know, I've always said about Ted Bundy that in all of his organization, he should have learned how to drive. After all, it was after being stopped for erratic driving that led to his capture twice, and ultimately even his last capture. You see, even after he was caught the first time, he planned his escape. That's right, I said his first escape, actually. He jumped from a courthouse window. On his next escape, he lost weight so he could escape from a duct in the ceiling. And remember, he was under that, quote, mask of normality. That was until he took it off. Then he became a monster. A monster that escaped and found his way to Florida. And there, this organized killer from the West, well, he became very disorganized here in the East. For it was in the early mornings of January the 15th, 1978, that he broke into a sorority house in Florida State University there. And there he sexually assaulted and murdered 2 women. He then made his way down the hall, attacked a young lady by the name of Kathy, and then her roommate, Karen. Attacked them both in their room. And get this, later, even went a few blocks down. And then he killed a dance student, Cheryl Thomas. Bludgeoned her, rather. So instead of planning out the attacks and executing the attacks in an organized way, well, he chose to go on a murder spree. And there he left all kinds of evidence behind. Authorities were even able to match bite marks to the victim in this murder spree. Now, some serial killers who go from organized to disorganized, well, they do so because they build up a false confidence in their ability to get away with the crimes. That could have easily been Bundy's downfall. After all, he had already been caught twice and gotten away. And those charges, they were only for a few of many others that he was not charged with. He must have thought that he was superhuman. Others have said, well, his urge to kill outweighed the need to be organized. Whichever, it is when they become sloppy in their killing that they can be more easily caught. You can see the digression from organized to disorganized also in the Golden State Killer, when he ventured to Ventura, California, and attacked a couple. You see, at first, the Golden State Killer just ransacked houses. Then he raped single women. Then he raped women and tied up their husbands. Then he evolved into a killer. At first organized, then became disorganized. Again, you can follow it on our podcast on the Golden State Killer, CharlieCrimebuster.com. There's something else I must share with you before we leave today's podcast about serial killers. While motives can change, there are 3 big things that we must know about serial killers. They follow this. First and foremost is availability. You see, there are times when people unintentionally make themselves available for a serial killer to strike. Next is vulnerability. They are not only available, but they become vulnerable to their stalker. Those 2, availability and vulnerability, well, they are those that we can have some control over. But the third one, well, that's all on the serial killer. That's desirability. He or she desire to kill so strong, they give in to their desire, and they choose to kill. So in our lessons to learn this week, let's learn on not being available and not being vulnerable to a possible attack. And if you've listened to me at all, you know I'm going to use this term, so let me say it. Situational awareness. I really cannot think of anything more important to practice personally and to teach your loved ones the importance of being aware of your surroundings at all times. A good number of serial killers actually stalk their victims. Maybe they could have been noticed in advance. They often use a ruse, and they use that ruse and the person becomes vulnerable to their con. This is why we say never leave a bar or a gathering late into the night alone. You do become vulnerable to an attack. Beware of strangers who will try to con you into helping them, only for you to fall as their victims. Thank God many in America do have good hearts and want to help, and should, but only help in ways they can stay safe themselves and keep their own loved ones safe. You see, another thing we can do is support the people out there who've dedicated their lives to keeping us safe from those who would do us harm. You can do that right now today by going to our new project, peacemakernetwork.com. Learn what we're doing to support the men and women of law enforcement, the first responders who rush to aid us, and the military who go around the world to protect us. Go to peacemakernetwork.com. Learn how you can support this work with just $3 a month. And if you are a present or past hero who helps us, you too can go to peacemakernetwork.com. Go to a special portal we call the Hero Portal. See how we can help you right now at no cost whatsoever to you. That is peacemakernetwork.com. Go to the Hero Portal. And as we conclude our part 2 of Serial Killers Among Us, follow us on Facebook, where we will announce where you can join us in our Let's Talk About It series. That's coming up this week. Live talk about serial killers among us. Check out Charlie at Facebook. We're going to leave a link there on our show notes for you. So until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster here, reminding you, be alert, be safe. For the life you save, well, it may be your very own.